So there's this thing called the Army Men community, and it's a pretty good community. It's a nice little corner of the internet where kids are working on stuff instead of playing Fortnite. I've been a part of that community for quite a while, so obviously I wanted to get back into making Army Men stop motions because I was kind of absent for a long time. So that's what I did. I was like, okay, I'm gonna make an Army Men stop motion. But then I was thinking, oh wait, if I want to make an Army Men stop motion, I'll probably film inside to make it easier. And then I was like, oh wait, if I film inside, I can't use my cardboard tanks because it wouldn't fit well. And I was like, oh wait, what if I use plastic tanks? And then I was like, oh wait, I don't have any plastic tanks because I always made cardboard tanks. That's why I made cardboard tanks, because I didn't have any plastic tanks. But then I said, oh wait, I can make plastic tanks. I have a 3D printer. And I was like, oh my god, I should make the M60 Bully. And that's how we got here. Ironically, I never finished that stop motion that I wanted to make. Instead, I just finished the Bully video because the Bully was actually taking quite a long time. So it's kind of stupid. So that's what I did in the winter of 2021, 1 year ago. And it seemed like a fun idea, making the Bully. Maybe I'll get some views and stuff, and I did get a lot of views. But today we're going to be looking at how I made the Bully. Because the thing is, at that time, I didn't have any experience in 3D modeling. I literally just uploaded a video saying I would start 3D modeling. I 3D modeled a single soldier, and that made me think that, hey, I can 3D model a tank just as well as a company. Yeah, let's do this. So as the crackhead I am, I just did it anyway. And maybe that's a good thing. It's like jumping into a pool when it's cold. You just gotta jump in, get it over with, and then you'll be fine. The main point I'm trying to say here is that I am no expert at 3D modeling. In this video, the workflow and how I do everything and model everything is probably not the most professional way of doing things. If professional modelers had the skill comparable to just walking, my skill would be something like this. I would still be moving forward, but probably not in the most elegant or correct way. But before we look at the horrendous modeling I did for this tank, let's look at the program I use. This is Blender, a free 3D modeling program that everyone can download. But just because it's free doesn't mean it's actually free, because 3D modeling software are actually pretty hard to run. So you need a good computer. But let's not worry about that. I don't think any of you will start 3D modeling anytime soon. After all, it took about 20 years for someone to model the Bully. So the first thing I did to model the Bully was actually smart. I got measurements and proportions of the M60 Bully from people online. Because how are you gonna model something if you don't know how it looks like? So I measured it in this editing software that's like MS Paint. I go more into depth with this in my scaling video. You could check out that. It's kind of boring, but whatever. And I just measured certain proportions of the tank, the turret, and stuff like that. Now the second step I took was completely idiotic. I wasn't confident about my modeling skills, so instead of jumping straight into the pool of water, I was trying on different long sleeve swimming suits to keep me warm. So what I did to make modeling quote-unquote easier was I downloaded a pre-existing model of the M60 tank, and I thought I could just convert this tank to make it look like the M60 Bully. And you would think this is a great idea. I mean, now 50% of my work is done. So I'm here trying to convert this model, and I start realizing this is pretty difficult. There's a lot of vertices, and it's really hard to reshape a model into another shape. This gear isn't supposed to be here, it's supposed to be a circle. I ended up wasting a lot of time, but I did move on to step 3, which these steps don't even make sense anymore. I ended up wasting a lot of time, but I did end up sculpting the turret. Luckily, I was more experienced in sculpting than modeling, so I was able to just start sculpting the turret by converting it into a piece of fat lump of crap. And I think if you're going to start modeling things in Blender, you should start with sculpting because it's a lot easier to play with some clay instead of building something out of blocks of wood. But I still had to learn how to model things, and luckily the Bully was a good way of letting me ease into it. Modeling the gun was my first taste of actually modeling something with some cylinders and squares, and it was actually extremely easy. You put a cylinder here, some toruses for this thing, and then some more it's just a bunch of cylinders. Now you can see it's coming together. I was sculpting things and making it look like the reference photos, and it didn't look half bad. Now that I'm looking back at it, sculpting and modeling the Bully was such a great learning experience. I never took any classes for modeling. Instead, you just have to plunge into the pool of water and just start doing stuff, even if it's a little difficult. But I do think you also need a strong motivator, and for this project, it was money and clout, the two greatest motivators in the world. After finishing the basic shape of the turret, I now had enough confidence to start modeling the tank from scratch. Now instead of working with someone else's vertices, I was working with my own. Here I also tried my hand at modeling the wheels, and they were getting a little easier to model as my skill increased. Let's move on to step 4, modeling the details. I am very glad that the first tank I've ever modeled was the Bully tank, because if I was modeling a real model kit, I'd probably die from modeling the details. When you first look at this combination of different details, it becomes really hard to understand how to make it. But since I've been making cardboard tanks for years, I understood that you just have to break it down into simple shapes. But even then, how the hell do I model this? I can put two circles together, but I can't do this. Luckily, I developed a cheat code, which was basically this. Why model something when you could use a 3D JPEG? Obviously, in this modern day and age, you can convert a JPEG drawing into a 3D object. All you have to do is make the shape on a black to white background, convert it into an SVG file, and import it to Blender. Luckily though, most of the details on the Bully are simple shapes, so I did not have to do a lot of this stuff. But I think I'll use it a lot in the future. Once you get into modeling, you start to understand that it's actually pretty easy. You just have to make a bunch of shapes and put them together. For instance, the tracks. At first glance, this looks like a nightmare to model, but once you start studying it, you realize that it's just a square that's curved and beveled with two cylinders on the side. Then you just duplicate it a ton and you're done. However, I did lie to you. It's not always that easy. For instance, the tracks on the Bully are simplified and made for mass production. So the wheels and tracks are just bounded together onto one piece of plastic. But right now on the model, the wheels are separate and the tracks are separate and all the details are just kind of floating there. I had to make a solid of the entire track piece, but how do you do that? How do you get that shape? And this is where you really have to struggle, look at tutorial videos, and just experiment with different modifiers and settings until you get that shape. Finally, after I finished modeling everything, the tank was basically done. It looked like a Bully to me, and I sent it to some of my Bully friends to verify if it was accurate or not. Unfortunately, I wasn't done yet because when you model things for 3D print, you have to think about it a lot more. You have to think about how are you going to print it. The limitations of the 3D printer are very strict. So in order to print something like this on an FDM printer for say, you have to make it flat on a certain side of the piece. And again, I'm so glad I modeled the Bully because it was made and designed to be manufactured. To connect the Bully parts together, I just used the Boolean modifier, which basically is a modifier that uses a shape and takes the shape away from whatever you're modeling. So then I could create like pegs, like Legos. However, I think I should have done this a lot better because I used small little pegs to connect the Bully together and they were very hard to work with in real life. When all the pieces were divided up and finished, I was able to print them on an FDM printer. And I ended up realizing that I did a pretty good job. I was so proud of it that I actually thought about selling it because my first intention was to just get a tank for a stop motion. And now I'm here learning how to model what? I kinda went off the rails of my original plan. But now I was thinking about selling it, and of course I ended up doing so. Because as a teenager in my senior year of high school, I do need some money to enjoy my life. And plus, I thought it would be good to put on college applications. Speaking of, if you do want to buy a Bully, I'm still selling them on my shop. And of course, whenever you look at it, it might not be in stock at the time, but I do make them from time to time. And you can look at my sold items to see the amount of Bullies I made, and you could even message me if you really want one. In the end, I'm very thankful to the Bully for introducing me into 3D modeling. It seems that after this endeavor, I finally have jumped and started swimming in the pool. And with these skills, I could probably model a ton of other tanks and vehicles. But that's for the future. So I hope you enjoyed this insight into modeling the Bully. As always, I'll continue to make more fun and hopefully share it with you guys. So that's all for today. Maybe you should try out modeling as well. It's pretty good. Just don't crash your computer. You know how much footage I have of just my computer that was frozen? Yeah.